And now, weighing in out of the blue corner, Josh the Punk Thompson. 100% agree. And on the other mic, he weighs in from the red corner, Big John McCarthy.
Well, hello and welcome to the Weighing In podcast without the guy that is the punk. Josh Thompson is not here, so it's all about me and my man George. We're going to go through some questions. We got fan questions to talk about. We got some fights to talk about coming up. There's so many things going on in the world of MMA. George, are you feeling good?
Oh, yeah, baby. I'm feeling wonderful.
That's the way. You look fantastic, my friend.
I pull off the bald head pretty good.
Dude, I like that.
Life is kind of forcing me to pull off the bald head the more my hairline goes back.
Your hairline ain't moving. It's all right.
It's
still there.
It's
you
thinner.
You don't have a 5 head. You still have a 4 head.
I got a 3 head. My pinky. I don't got a lot of brain power going on. So.
Is that what it is?
Maybe. I think.
Yeah, guess something like that. It's a 4 head. So what do we got going on, man? What's happening?
Oh, well, we got some lovely fan Q&A questions. And we have some interesting potential matchups for the UFC, some PFL. You know, we're just living life. We're just going with the flow of the Saturday of no fights.
Sliding along. There you go. No fight Saturday. It's kind of weird.
It's weird, but it's oddly peaceful. It's like when your house
oddly peaceful.
It's when your house is too quiet and you think something's wrong because it's too quiet. You're like,
you know something's wrong.
Yeah, there's no chaos going on right now. What's happening?
That's it. Yep. True.
But I'll hop into some of these fight suggestions for us to get this show rolling along. So the first thing we got here in our text message thread is the potential, which seems to be getting more and more likely to happen, of Movsar Evloev and Aaron Pico. Yeah, July 26th, Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I hear that's going to be that is definitely going to happen, which I'm surprised. You know, it's one of those you look and you go, it's always the same. And it's like, you know, I look at how the UFC matches up things, and, you know, I was surprised Patchy Mix getting over to the UFC, and right away they give him, you know, somebody that you look and you go, Mario Batista, all right, that's not a bad matchup for him. That's actually a really good matchup for him. And so, wow, the UFC is really not trying to dog Patchy Mix. But if you're going to go with Aaron Pico, you're going to say, is he going to get out wrestled by Evloev? No, he's not going to get out wrestled by him. I'm not saying that Evloev can't give him some problems at times, but trust me, Pico can definitely give Evloev problems. They're wrestling. Let's say that it, you know, cancels each other out. Striking wise, let's go for it. Well, it's good. Evloev's got, you know, he's some power, but he doesn't like to, you know, he doesn't like to stand up for long if he doesn't have to. He wants to take the fight to the ground, and he's going to have to work his tail off to get Aaron Pico in any kind of situation. And I'm just saying right now, Aaron Pico is not the same fighter that came in with, you know, all the hype, but he was 18 years old. He's 28 years old now. He's 10 years past all that. Okay. And the time that he has spent at Jackson Winklejohn's, you know, gym in Albuquerque, he is a completely different fighter. He is absolutely a top flight world level competitor in 145. You know, he's fast. He does have power. You know, I've seen him, you know, hit people and they just absolutely fold. He folded one guy over. You know, it looked like he made a scorpion out of him. You know, and you just don't see that with 145 pounds. Usually the power starts to come in 155. You'll get some guys like a Justin Gaethje, something like that, or, you know, there are guys that have some power, but, you know, it's usually 155 and up. You start to get those. Aaron Pico can swat.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying that Evloev is not a, you know, phenomenal fighter and that he definitely can't, you know, win the fight, but I look at it and I go, it's a tough fight. I understand why the UFC made it, but they might be getting rid of one of their undefeated fighters too.
Yeah.
The guys, Aaron Pico is way better than people realize now. Way better.
Well, if I could give a quick shout out to our partners over at
Do it.
BetUSTV.com, check out all their sports content. Do you think Aaron Pico comes in an underdog against Evloev?
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to come in as an underdog, which is the surprising, again, kind of matching up the Patchy mix, thing. Patchy has only got one loss. He's 20-1. So I understand why they're saying, okay, we know how good he is. We know he's been a champion. All the things because you can also look at Patchy. Patchy's got I want to say probably 12 amateur fights that he was undefeated in. So he's only got, out of 30 some fights, he's got the one loss. And it was one that, he lost because he got tired and he didn't have the maturity to understand how to make the fight go his way after he had won the first 2 rounds in a championship fight. So it happens. But, him being the favorite, I'm like, okay, they get it. They get how good he is. When you take a look at Evloev and you have a guy who is undefeated and has, beaten everybody in the UFC, they're not going to take and make Aaron Pico the favorite. That ain't going to happen. Aaron's got losses on his record, and they're going to say, oh, no. Evloev is definitely going to be the favorite in it. You'll see that Pico's going to be the dog. The question is, how much of a dog is he going to be? Because that's where you look and you say, I can make some money here.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
I feel like it's a bit of UFC, not a punishment for Evloev, but he's very vocal of, he feels he deserves the next title shot. He feels he should get it. I even had a fan DM me, one of the fans of the show, basically chewing me out about the 45 division.
Chewing you out.
About Yair getting a title shot and not Evloev.
Well, you can look and say, okay, Yair had a very good fight against Pitbull. He did. That was a good performance, but he did exactly what you would think that he had to do to get the win. But, it was a decision win. And he's already fought Volkanovski, and he got pretty well handled. Now, I'm not saying that Volkanovski is the same. He's kind of tailing off a little bit. But it's a fight you've seen. I don't blame Evloev for saying, hey, here, how many more wins do I have to have before you give me that shot? Because if you recall, you're absolutely right about Evloev having a little bit of kind of not heat, but words with the UFC as far as what they're doing and everything like that. But I can remember when they were getting rid of a guy named Yair Rodriguez. So, it's one of those, you're always going to have it. It's part of, the fighters and the promotion are always going to have times when they don't agree on things or they're not happy. That's part of being a fighter. A promoter cannot make every fighter happy. It's impossible.
Very true.
Crazy.
Very true. Well, I hope we can make that one fan that was in my DMs happy by discussing it a bit. I mean, the UFC promised Yair the title shot after the Diego thing, and Hunter and the UFC is not one to back off of their promises.
No,
unless they want to.
No, look, if there's one thing that, most fighters, they'll tell you, they love the fact that if Hunter tells them something, it's good. It's no different than Ilia Topuria. So the UFC promised me, my first fight up at, lightweight would be for a championship. Well, look at what's happening. He's fighting for a championship. It's not against the guy that held the title, but it's absolutely for a vacant title. And so he's getting exactly what they promised him. And that's one of the things that the fighters love about Hunter. You're always going to get, Dana, Hunter's the guy, he doesn't, publicly he doesn't talk. Dana talks. And so fighters get upset with some of the things that Dana says. And that's normal, but Dana's got to talk and he's got to put things out there and he's got to end up, talking about people that sometimes it's going to make them really happy. And sometimes it's not going to make them happy at all. You take a look at the whole, the Jon Jones pound for pound fighter thing with Islam Makhachev. Well, one of them is not going to be happy with what you say, but he's got to sit there and talk about it. So, if it's one of those things, hey, I can't make everybody happy, but Hunter doesn't talk to the media, so he can make guys pretty happy.
Well, good for him. I think it works a lot better for the fighters that way. Like, You shouldn't have to kiss these grown men ass to come fist fight.
You don't want to kiss grown man ass.
No, I'm just kidding. But going from one potential title contender to another, we have Fluffy Hernandez versus Roman Dolidze.
That's a good fight.
August 9th in Las Vegas. That's a very good fight.
That's a good fight. You look and you go, strength wise, as far as, where their strengths are at and everything. Fluffy Hernandez is, the one thing about him is he's just a grinding dog.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't quit. He doesn't stop. And and it's like, you think you hurt him and you did, but he just keeps on coming. He just doesn't, he's got that zombie like, thing about him that, man, it's like, you got to cut his head off to make him stop. And he's really good on the ground. He's a lot better than people realize. And his stand-up has gotten pretty slick too. Dolidze's stand-up is not as good as Fluffy's, but he hits hard.
Oh yeah.
It's just not real smooth as far as everything he's doing. But, it gets him through everything. And when he gets the fight to the ground, he's dominant when he gets on top. The question is, can he do that with, Anthony Hernandez? Can he dominate from the top? Now, his ground and pound, I know he's going to do really well with, but he's not going to be able to get submissions against Fluffy. I don't see that happening. So it's going to have to be the ground and pound, and he's going to have to do damage. He cannot just get the fight to the ground and hold on. If he holds on, it's going to be trouble because time's going to be going by and he's going to be getting tired. And if there's one thing we've seen out of Anthony Hernandez, he's got a gas tank. He doesn't get tired. He continues to push the pace, and the pace of the fight continues to get faster as the rounds go on. And since, that looks like, I'm not sure that's going to be a main event. Did it say it was a main event?
Yes, a fight night main event.
So then it's a 5-round fight. So, boom, it's 5 rounds. You got all your work cut out for you with Hernandez.
Definitely. And Dolidze's coming off of 3 nice wins.
Very nice wins.
He lost to Nazarene, but
that's losing to someone who's at the top of the heap in the 185-pound division. So it's not like, wow.
And this fight was booked for last year and got canceled, and then Roman went on a 3-win streak. So yeah. I think it's kind of perfect.
No, I think you're never going to get the perfect timing on everything, but it is good timing because they're both coming off of wins, and they're both looking really good right now, and they're both moving up. And so I think right now, you look at it, it's like it's a pick'em fight. Dolidze looked fantastic. Dolidze's actually moved up into light heavyweight, moved back down into middleweight. So he, I don't know what he's got it going right now, but he's going to end up, he'll have his hands full with Fluffy.
Definitely. He definitely will. But moving on to my neck of the woods in Chicago, Illinois for UFC 319, a potential Carlos Prates and Michael Venom Page match.
Dude, I saw that. I was like shocked, man. I was like, that's a fireworks fight. And the real question in that one is, you look at it, it's that MVP is so unusual in the way that he fights, the way he moves, where his hands are at, everything. And Prates is a guy that, you look at, he's been freaking doing incredibly well, except for, you go to that last fight that he had. It was like, but how does he, and this is the whole thing, how does he end up trying to find people that he can, basically match up with and get that feel of what MVP does? Because there's only a couple of guys out there that you could really do it. You can look at, you can try to get Wonder Boy Thompson come to your camp, give you some rounds or something like that, because it'll give you somewhat of an idea of that movement, that side stance, all the karate stance that he does. You can get Raymond Daniels, who can come, but there's very few that you can get. And right now, with Prates, Prates came in, he was looking great, 4 wins in a row, and then he faced Ian Machado Gary, and if there was one thing that you could look at in that fight that gave him problems was movement, and that's where MVP, he's got absolutely the same movement, ability and frustration level of a fighter that you'll find that Ian Machado Gary was able to do. Now Prates did great in the last round, but MVP is just an unusual individual. Obviously, Machado Gary has fought both of them now, so he'd be the best person to give you an idea who he thinks is going to win the fight. But even Gary, who went into the MVP fight saying he was going to stand with him, quickly became a wrestler and was trying to take MVP down, and did, and that was to get the win, and that was smart. And then you can take a look at how he was with Prates. He was okay, and he was comfortable in the stand-up. That kind of gives you an idea of where they're at. Now, Prates is going to pressure MVP. He's going to go after him, coming at him. But that sometimes is what can get you in trouble, because the flying knees and everything that MVP, brings up. I haven't seen anyone that has decided to stand with MVP that wins. It's always the guys that are trying to take him down. Now, you can look and say Douglas Lima, had one, but he was starting to, fade in that one a little bit. And he landed there was the kick, and he landed the perfect punch as he was getting up. Great job. But that's about it. Everybody else, the wrestlers are the ones that, are trying to, get him down, hold him down. And if they can do that, they can get the win. But MVP he is a hard puzzle to figure out. Prates, I love the way he fights. He's got to stop smoking. Other than that, you know what? He's just fun to watch. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's a tough fight for Prates.
Oh yeah. And that same night, there is a little fight that they've been mentioning, puts a smile on Josh Thompson's face. Michael Chandler versus Ruffy.
Mauricio Ruffy. This is one of those. Well, it's funny. I look at it this way. Michael Chandler wanted that Conor McGregor fight for so long. Well, who do they say that Mauricio Ruffy is the second coming of? Well, he's the second coming of Conor McGregor. Well, at least you get the second coming. So, you don't get the first course, but you get the second course. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, Lord.
That's and this is fighting, George. This is where you look and you try to tell people, man, Michael Chandler at one time, look, he was a really good fighter because he mixed things up, and ever since he's gone to the UFC, he's come up with the idea of being exciting is more important than winning, and he's made choices inside the cage. But a lot of it is not only choices inside the cage, it's choices that he's made with just what he wants to do with his career. And it's gotten to the point where he's not the same athlete. He's not the same fighter. And if you're going to end up fighting these guys that are in the top, which he's been fighting, it's going to be hard to get wins if you're not fighting really smart. And many times, Michael just doesn't fight a smart fight, and now his speed and everything is tailing off a little bit. And it only takes, little tiny incremental changes to be where the punch lands or it doesn't land. You get the takedown, you don't get the takedown. All of those things are, just part of age and damage and everything that happens in the fight game. And right now, Mauricio Ruffy hasn't been damaged. He's looked pretty good in all of his fights. And like his last one was pretty fast, So, I look and I go, hey, what are they doing? Well, they're looking and saying, Michael Chandler's been in the top of the lightweights. He makes good money. Enjoy this fight. That's that they're gonna put that, as I say, they're gonna put the pelt on Mauricio Ruffy's record to say, yeah, he fought Michael Chandler and won.
I feel like Josh has been in Hunter Campbell's ear though, going from Bobby Green to Michael Chandler, or been in the ear for Ruffy. I don't even know how I said that, but I think Josh has been in Hunter Campbell's ear about the Ruffy fights because he went from Bobby Green to Michael Chandler.
Yeah. I look at that and it's look, let's be honest. I love Bobby King Green or just King Green. But you can see what's happening now with him. The speed has changed a little bit. He's not able to land things. He's able to get hit. Everything's changed, and so his career is now in that, the waning, years or months of his fight career, and so what's the easier fight? Oh my God. King Green's going to be the easier fight for Chandler, and Mauricio Ruffy is not a fight that anybody right now is saying, oh, that's an easy fight.
Yeah.
That ain't going to be easy for anyone.
Well, let's hope. Honestly, I would like it to happen. I want Chicago to be as crazy as a night as humanly possible in the MMA world. But moving on to the co-main event for August 23rd, that is in the works at Shanghai Indoor Stadium, Song Yadong versus Rob Font.
That's a good fight. It's one of those. Rob Font has gotten much better as far as his wrestling defense, his takedown defense, and everything. Song Yadong is just, man, he is hittable. It's the one thing that I will give Rob as far as, a chance for Rob in this fight is Song Yadong is very hittable. But, man, he is a good athlete. He is fast. He's got good wrestling. His stand-up is actually, he believes in his stand-up. He's got some snap and power on his shots. He takes too many shots to deliver his at times, but he's got a good chin. And you just look and going home and being in front of his people, that's going to be a very difficult night for Rob Font to do well against Song Yadong. But, look, Rob Font he's tough as hell and he is very skilled, but Song Yadong is going to be the favorite in that fight.
Yeah, I see that. I'm happy Rob's getting another chance at a top name in the division, though.
Yeah.
After, he lost to Cory, he lost to Davison, beat Kyler Phillips, beat Gene Matsumoto. So I'm happy. And that was the same night Song poked Cejudo in the eyes. So they both had the same a little bit of layoff. I like it. It's a very nice matchup.
Yeah, no, you take a look and the whole thing with as you said, the Kyler Phillips, that was a good win for Rob Font because Kyler Phillips is on the upswing and he's good everywhere. His ground game is fantastic. His stand up is good, but Rob Font found a way to give him problems and he looked great in that fight. And then the Matsumoto fight, everyone was like saying, "Oh, you know what, Gene Matsumoto, he's the new up and coming star." Well, it was a close fight, but I thought that Rob Font won it. And so you take a look and, the guys that he's been losing to, I mean, he lost to Aldo. He lost to
Chito.
Cory Sanhagen. Oh, Chito Vera was that before Cory Sanhagen. And he lost to Devinson Figueiredo. I mean, it's not like he's fighting chumps.
Yeah.
He's fighting, really good people. So, this is just another one to put on there, putting Song Yadong up there, another tough fight. It doesn't get easy.
Once you start making certain money, they stop giving you them easy fights. Huh?
That's it.
Well,
as your money goes up, so does the difficulty. It's just the way it is.
Well, to go to a fight that was announced on the other side of the fence, at featherweight for the PFL Championship Series, July 19th in Cape Town, we have AJ McKee versus Ahmed Magomedov.
Yeah.
I had to read it slowly.
That's all right.
And the same night, you have Corey Anderson versus Dennis Goltsov.
Yeah, and that's going to be Corey Anderson going up to heavyweight.
Yeah.
So you look and you go, Goltsov is big. He is a big, strong individual. But Cory can, the real thing that Cory's got to be careful of in the stand-up, Goltsov's got good hands and they're fast. And he's got a great jab and he uses it well to set up his right hand. On the ground, Cory can do damage to Goltsov. Goltsov on the ground, as far as his submission game is okay. He's got submissions, but he's not super dangerous there. And a lot of guys have had success in getting him on the ground and holding him there. But, finishing him is not easy. But Cory doesn't finish people with submissions. He finishes people with, ground and pound, and especially elbows. And now elbows are legal in the PFL. So that's a great thing for him. It's a tough fight for Cory stepping up like this, but I actually think it's a good fight for Cory Anderson.
I like it. I'm excited to see Cory Anderson at heavyweight.
Yeah.
And then
Cory always comes in shape, so the real question is how heavy will he be? Because really, it's a matter of I see him doing almost the same thing as a Ryan Bader. Mm-hmm. Is that he'll just be his normal weight, so he's going to be 225, 228 pounds, and not have to cut and not have to do any of the stuff that sucks and just feel good. It's not a bad place to be.
Definitely not. And that is the end of my fight announcement talks. But I have a couple of news articles I just wanted to run by you just to hear your thoughts on them. So it was revealed via Cain Velasquez that Dana White did in fact pay his bail to be released before he got his other sentencing. And the bail was $1 million.
Yep.
Now, I feel like the average person would be surprised by this, but having a little bit of an understanding of Dana, it makes total and complete sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is something Dana does things all the time that, people don't know about. And he's helpful with, people in need, people in need that have, operations that are needed and things like that. He takes care of people, it's not, he doesn't broadcast it. He doesn't put it out in the media, and he shouldn't. These are the things that you do when you have the ability to do them. Dana's got a lot of money. I don't know where the $1 million, if it came out of his account or if it came out of, a business account or whatever, but he didn't have to do it, but he did it. And it was the right thing to do. And it was just a good thing that he took care of someone that was, part of his promotion for a while and that was in a bad spot as far as, and this is the whole thing. He's putting the $1 million down. Does he think that Cain Velasquez is a flight risk? No. Do I think I'm going to get my $1 million back? Yeah. Besides, whatever the percentage is that stays, but, he knew that Cain wasn't going to run and stuff. But it was the right thing to do to get Cain out. And this is where, people who sit there and say, he does this, he doesn't do this, for fighters. He doesn't do this. You don't know all the things that he does do. And there's those times that come out that, man, you know what? Cain needed him. And he was there. He wrote letters for Cain, as far as to the judge and things like that. Didn't work. That's not Dana's fault, but he did all the things that you would expect someone to do with a guy that was good for his business and should have been there a lot longer, actually, just injuries and stuff. But Dana did the right thing by doing that, and the fact that that was Cain that put that out, that wasn't Dana that put that out. So nice move by Dana.
Yeah, that is absolutely my favorite thing about all the nice stuff Dana does for his fighters is never him boasting about it, talking about it. Those fighters come out and say it.
That's okay. They can.
Yeah, they're allowed to, you know.
Sure.
And if they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to. They're grown-ass men.
That's it. That's it. But he's not sitting there going, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing what he thinks is the right thing to do, and then lets it go. Perfect.
It's a good stride of a man. Good on you, Dana. But moving on from that, for one, I want to give a little shout out real quick to our OnlyFans. Go over, follow for free. Nothing naughty unless you DM me. Just kidding. But
nothing naughty. I don't know. Did you hear about Cory Sandhagen?
Yeah, that's that's my news story that I'm going to talk about.
Holy shit.
So
is that real?
I do not know. But
there is no fucking way.
For the fans at home, when Cory Sandhagen was on Overdog's podcast, which is Mike Perry. He said that he made, and I quote, $2 million in 1 month
to show his nuts.
to show his nuts.
To show his nuts. No dick involved, just balls.
I'll grow an extra ball for $2 million in 1 month. You can see all 3 of them.
Dude, I was like, you did what? Well, again, like you said, if you don't get on OnlyFans, if you don't go to the smut, you don't get the smut on your algorithm. But if you want to follow Cory, and we've actually said, hey, you can follow Cory Sanhagen. So if I can't put Cory out there anymore, people are going to get smut.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to put Cory out there. It sounds like he has enough people
I would
searching
think
him
so.
out. Maybe Cory should shout us out. Put a little weighing in logo on his sack.
Dude, now he needs to start tattooing shit on his balls. Advertisement.
That would be big money. Get a little like a Buc-ee's logo.
Oh, dude, you could do a DraftKings. Boom.
Ooh, you could get your promo code lasered on.
There you go. Whew, that'd be painful.
And if you want to see smut, no judgment. But if you want good quality MMA content from 2 of the best MMA minds in the business, go over to our OnlyFans.
There you go.
Link in our link tree, link in bio. Go over there, discuss. They have live streams once a month, extra content, anything you want. They got it.
Boom.
But yeah, $2 million.
No Cory Sanhagen balls.
If you guys give us $2 million, we will collaborate Josh and John's nuts. Not in the same room, but
we might even put them in the same room.
For $2 million?
$2 million, yeah. Might be in the same room.
That's amazing.
Shit.
All right. Now, my last news story before we get into some lovely fan questions is that Merab Dvalishvili, in the words of Chael, Dvalishvili, Merab has suffered a broken toe 2 weeks out of his title match versus Sean O'Malley.
Yep.
What are the odds that he Conor McGregor's and pulls out of this fight?
0.
You don't think Merab has any bitch in his blood?
Merab, look, it's his little toe. Yeah, it looks a little puffy and a little black and blue. But first off, Merab is not the most fleet of foot as far as his style of fighting is. He is definitely not going to pull out of the fight. He is going to go through with the fight with a toe that's taped next to his other toe, unless the commission gets a hard on for it. But yeah, he'll be fine. You just look and you go. The best part was you see him in the video. He sits there and he says, "You broke my toe." He goes, "You kicked me in the head." So you gotta look and say, well, if you're kicking someone in the head and you break your toe, I guess it is your fault. It's not his fault, but
that's one way to look at it. Merab is also the man that dove headfirst into a frozen lake.
Oh yeah,
and lacerated his scalp almost all the way across.
Dude, look, if there's one thing that you know about Merab, he enjoys life. He is crazy, and that's what makes him fun, man. The guy is just absolutely. He is living life and enjoying every goddamn moment of it. So you take a look and you go, way to go, dude. You know what? Just keep going, because that's what it's about. Even though the broken toe sucks, but not a big deal.
I've never broken a toe, never broken a finger. I got wild thumbs. My thumbs bend really far back.
That's a wild thumb.
So that's about the most I got on that.
Broken too many fingers, broken too many toes.
I can't imagine.
No big deal. One time I was going on a football field when I was young. I was being a smart ass and walking out, and I got my shoulder pads and my jersey and stuff, and the quarterback's throwing the ball, right? And he zips the ball, and he kind of zips it, and I go, bap, and I put my hand up, right? And it hits me and just folds my finger, my middle finger across my the other 2 fingers, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, God damn it. I can't sit here and make a big deal about it. I got to just keep on walking, right? And go over to the trainer. Can you pop that back, please? What the hell did you do? Just was a dumbass. That's all. Yeah, that's all. It's called karma.
I would often play that prank every year in high school when I was in PE. At least once a year, I would smack the ball out of the air and be like, oh, and I would
dude.
hold my thumb all crazy. Like,
Dude, I'll tell you what, your thumb definitely, you're double jointed there. I used to have a friend that could take his fingers and they would go up and down, these three, and they would go, It was like, how the hell do you do that? He was double jointed in all those fingers. It almost looked like his fingers were lightning. It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm sure Merab's fine. Merab,
I'm sure he'll be fine.
if he wants, he can borrow one of my toes.
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
There you go.
All right. Now it is time for me to move on to some fan questions for you guys. All right. So we put up a community post. We put up a tweet. We put up an Instagram post. Thank you guys for commenting. We went over a bunch of questions in the yesterday's episode with Josh and Angelo. So if your question didn't get answered this time around, check out the other one. Watch the whole entire thing, or look at the time notes that I spent many hours adding.
Many hours.
Just kidding. But my first question is from Jenner0177. Big John, who created the early UFC belts? Was it Joe Marshall?
God, I'll tell you what. I can find that out for you, but I don't know his name off the top of my head. I remember meeting him. I remember seeing how he did the belts and stuff, but I do not recall his name. I apologize. It's something that I am lacking in, but he was the same guy that did, like the WWE belts and things like that. I want to say,
was it a man named Dave Millican?
Damn, I do not remember his name. I could be wrong as far as who it was.
Do they look like this man?
Yeah, kind of.
Could be him.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that lovely question. Yeah. Those old belts were beautiful. I feel like championship belts are a lost art form. There's when you look at them closely, they're very intricate, very detailed. I got to see the one championship heavyweight belt close up. Well, they all look the same. Yeah, it's giant.
It's a big one.
And I told them I did not want to hold it because of how heavy and expensive they told me it was. Everyone else. How
expensive did they say it was?
More than I make podcasting. I'll tell you that.
They lied.
Yeah, it was their travel belt, but I still didn't want to ding it. I didn't want to mess it up.
You figure an average belt somewhere in the area of around $1,000.
That's not terrible.
$800 to $1,000 for the belt.
Yeah, and you can get fairly cheap replicas. I know, like WWE does a lot of their belts. They sell put football teams, college teams. They'll make a belt for anything, really.
Hell yeah, spinning belts. They do the whole thing.
All right. Well, I'm gonna head on to my next question from.
So I did such a shitty job answering the first one.
No, you didn't do a shitty job. I blame Jenner0177 for asking that question. Just kidding, Jenner. But our next question is from 126 Hellbow.
Hellbows.
Do you believe we will ever see a true MMA Hall of Fame museum?
No, I don't. I think the truest Hall of Fame you're going to get is the only... Here, figure this out. The easiest way for me to say it. The UFC's got their Hall of Fame. Okay. They pay for it, and everything. And you need to understand, and this is where, when Josh and I are talking about, hey, we need these other promotions. The fighters need these other promotions. The fans actually get behind them. Here's the problem. You can take a look at, and I get, people say, well, Cage Warriors and stuff. Cage Warriors is paid for by the UFC. Okay. There's a lot. Invicta, paid for by the UFC. Okay. There's all these shows. LFA, paid for by the UFC. All right. So all these shows out there that are putting on fights where you've got people not making a whole lot of money, but they're getting their career, moving in the direction so they can get to the UFC. Look at the UFC funds a lot of fight promotions. you know, obviously they don't fund the PFL. They used to kind of fund the World Series of Fighting, but you know, they obviously didn't fund Bellator or anything, but very few can stand on their own. And that's, you know, it's a problem for the sport. So when you sit there and you say, well, who's going to put money towards, you know, a Hall of Fame, a true Hall of Fame with a museum and stuff? How much money would it cost? So who's going to put that kind of money out for, you know, MMA as far as a whole? You know, you're just not going to find, in my opinion, you're not going to find someone that's going to be able to put out. There's been, you know, some guys that have, you know, tried to do the, you know, some of that stuff. I want to say, what's his name? Bowman tried to do it for a while, and he, you know, he's got like, you know, I'm in his Hall of Fame, Hickson Gracie, Fedor. He's got a bunch of people in this Hall of Fame, but, you know, it didn't go anywhere, and it's because it costs money. You know, everything costs money, and if you don't have money, and again, if you don't have money to burn, it's not worth it. And so the only thing I, you know, think you're going to see is the UFC's Hall of Fame. You know, and, you know, what it is. It doesn't matter. You know, the problem with the UFC's Hall of Fame is it's that they are the ones in control of it. And, you know, I'm going to say they should be. It's theirs, you know. But you take a look and you can say that there's people in their Hall of Fame that you can look at and you go, not really. But, you know, they wanted to put them in there, and that's what they did because they own it. It's not like, you know, the baseball Hall of Fame where you have the writers doing it, or the NFL Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying those are perfect either. They're not. So I don't know what there is perfect, but I think the UFC's Hall of Fame is the only one you're going to get.
I think it would be amazing to have like all the defunct companies. Like, I want to see their own section in the Hall of Fame, you know, the Pride section, the Strike Force section. I need that. It's a part of what made the sport so beautiful and unique in the beginning, and it's a part that's not there anymore. So it's only looked at in history through rose tinted glasses.
True.
It probably wasn't as fun in the fairgrounds.
Dana used to have freaking tombstones. They were obviously, you know, styrofoam plastic thing, but tombstones of all the promotions that he had bought and killed off. You know, you look and you go, yeah, shit happens.
Oh yeah, but it made some beautiful memories for us, didn't it? All right, our next question from Ice KO.
Ice baby. Oh, sorry.
Stop. Collaborate. Okay, start. Does it seem like 2025 is an all-time low for MMA? Why hasn't UFC made any new superstars since the sale in 2017?
You know, everything is about, when you sit there and say new stars, you got to understand, it's how many shows do they have to put on? You know, and this is the whole thing. You know, they're getting more money. Look at the contract that they're trying to get for, you know, their, you know, product, as far as they want a $1 billion a year. $1 billion. You know, do you understand George, do you understand how much $1 billion is?
I can try. Well,
no, seriously, you think about it. If I was going to sit here and say, okay, if I was going to give you $100,000 a day, right? How long would it take for you to get $1 million? 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. If I was going to say, how long would it take, if I was going to give you $100,000 a day, how long would it take you to get $1 billion?
Take like 1,000, maybe
1,000 days.
That's my guess.
Okay. So 1,000 days would be about 3 years. It would take you 30 years.
Ugh.
30 years. That's how much $1 billion is. Okay. So you look and you go, $1 billion is an unbelievable amount of money. But, you know, I'm not saying that they don't deserve it. They do all the things, you know, to make their product great, but there is a give and take in that. So if someone's going to pay $1 billion, they want something on their channel, because every channel, every one of them, the biggest thing is content. How much content can we put out? So, the whole ESPN deal, you got to think about this. When I started with the UFC, there was like 3 shows a year. And then it got to 6 shows a year. Then when Zuffa came in, it was like 10 shows a year. Okay. And then it got 18 shows a year. Well, it's 42 shows a year on ESPN. Okay. That's a ton of shows. So it's tough to have your fighters. You not only have to now take this roster and make the roster bigger for all these fights, because you have fighters that get hurt. You get all these things that happen. So you've got to put on a show. So you're pulling in all these fighters from different things, okay, so we can have the fight. But it's hard to make a star out of someone when they're only seen a couple of times a year. And you try to push those ones that you think are going to be the star, but you're not always right. And that's just the way it is. And it's who do the fans, tend to, gravitate to, and who do they sit there and they, that's the person that resonates with them. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't, but it's like Merab. But let's be honest. We were talking about Merab. For the most part, the UFC was not happy with Merab for a long time. Okay. Everything he did was not something they wanted. Now the fans resonate with Merab Dvalishvili. And you look and you go, I understand why, but it wasn't there in the beginning, but it is now. And so, they're real happy with Merab now, and I'm glad to see it. But this is what happens. It's tough, to make a star, it takes time, and it takes the fighter doing the right things and, not making mistakes and winning fights and doing those things. And it takes the fans starting to, gravitate and, resonate with, what they're getting out of that fighter. You get all those things. Now you become the star. That's why, Conor was, great when he came in because of, the talk. Not only did he talk, he backed it up. And when you've got someone that can fight well, he can talk, and he backs up what he says, now you got something.
It's lightning in a bottle, baby.
Lightning in a bottle, baby.
There's no forcing stardom on anyone.
No. You try to force it, it's going to fail. It is just going to fail. There's guys out there that you can look at and go, trust me, they want to make that guy. They want people to love him because he's great. He's a great fighter. But people don't love him because of, might be the way that he fights in the cage, what he does outside of the cage. It's just, you cannot force it. The fans are going to decide who they like.
It reminds me of when he's doing wonderful now, and I'm so happy that he's doing wonderful now. But Ben Rothwell, when he would cut those promos after his fight, and he
Dude, he come out with the robe and everything. He had a good shtick, and Ben's a really nice guy, good guy, and he's a big dude, but he's doing great in bare knuckle now, and he was built for bare knuckle. He was built for it, man. It's the perfect thing for him. So I look and it's like good for Ben Rothwell, but yeah, it just did not resonate with fans. It's funny.
But now looking back on it, it resonates with me now. Seeing him do so well, seeing him win in bare knuckle, I want him to cut a promo and stick his arm up. I want it back.
I think long ago. I mean, long ago. But this would be back at like UFC, I don't know, somewhere around in the 100 to 110 area. Ben Rothwell's manager was a guy named Monty Cox, and they signed Ben to fight Cain Velasquez, and I was like, Monty, that's a horrible fucking fight for him, right? And he goes, no, Ben's gonna kill him, right? And I go, Monty, Ben Rothwell is a striker. I said, Cain Velasquez is gonna be hard for him to hit. He moves a lot. I said he can wrestle his ass off. I go, that's a horrible fight. He goes, oh, you just watched. I watched Ben get fucking mauled 3 rounds and just looked over at him like, told you. But but Ben definitely, he had his he's had a good career overall, but the bare knuckle has been fantastic for him. And people, again, take a look at now. him and Bare Knuckle, they're kind of buying into the whole, the dark shadow thing, and they're buying into it. It's great.
You just needed the right type of crazy fans behind you.
That's it.
All right, well, I'm going to head to my next question from JPW328. John, did you see the interview with Dr. Joseph Estwanik?
Estwanik.
He gave you a ton of credit for the design of the MMA glove.
Wow, how about that?
Did you see the interview?
I did not see the interview. Joe Estwanik was a doctor that was on USA Boxing back in when the UFC went to North Carolina for its third show. And Joe Estwanik ended up being the ringside physician for that show. And then he was there for the fifth, and he was trying to come up with this glove, and stuff. And so, I helped him out with stuff with the glove and everything, but he was a really good guy. And it was just a matter of timing and stuff. He used to bring his wife everywhere, and Joe Estwanik was a really good man. And he just kind of fell in love with MMA, and the Boxergenic glove was his glove, his design. And if I helped him a little bit with it, then I helped him a little bit with it. But it was, it's what the UFC first started using. And it had its problems because we used neoprene, which was actually good because it was real flexible and, moved real well. But sometimes, the guy would grab the glove and the finger would pop out of the neoprene little cupping for it or something like that. But overall, they were good gloves. They really were. Joe Estwanik, he deserves a lot of credit.
Did his glove become mandatory after they introduced it, or was it still you could use neoprene if you want, you can use his if you want?
Back when he first came out with the glove, they would allow certain people to wear whatever they wanted. Tank Abbott got to wear Harbingers. He would take the bar, out of the sparring glove, and he used Harbingers and stuff. And Tito would, kind of use his own, but most of them used the Boxergenic. Then it got to a point, Tank was gone, and they started every fight you had to have the Boxergenic, but Tito didn't like them and stuff. So there was always someone, complaining, and they say, okay, you can wear your glove. It was a little bit different back then. And this is what happens when you're building an empire.
The Wild West.
The empire is built on sticks and toothpicks.
Speaking of Tank, this is a little off topic. This is just off of my head. Have you seen the Street Beefs fighter named Death Sentence?
No.
He is a young African-American man who did training with Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse put out a little session with him. I don't want to be rude, but he might be intellectually disabled a little bit. Okay. He is doing the MMA. He is fighting. He's a badass. And he quotes that Tank Abbott is his favorite fighter and role model.
Okay.
It just made me
think it's his role model. It's not the person you want as a role model.
Yeah, but if you ever get a chance, you should watch him and Mighty Mouse train together because it's very wholesome. It makes my heart warm. And then Death Sentence won his first Street Beef fight. He's 1-3 now. So he got the victory. He's using his wrestling.
See, look at that, man. Mighty Mouse made him somebody.
I know.
I like that.
It's great to watch. It's a good watch. But moving on to the next question from Ryan B8736. Big John, were those Z Cavaricci pants you used to wear as a ref? Or
Z Cavaricci? No.
Z? I don't know how to say this fancy brand. Did you have a specific pants brand?
I did because I had a friend who owned that company.
What brand was it?
It was called Body Alive.
Ooh.
So I had a friend, Bobby Donnelly, who was just a great guy. And he owned this company. He was a bodybuilder, and he owned a company that put out all these wild, basic, some people call them parachute pants, balloon pants. Well, he had ones that were just black, and so that's what I wore because at the time I had really big legs, and it was I didn't want to bust out a regular pair of pants in there, so that they were comfortable. It worked. It was like, okay. So I wore his stuff, and he would make me the shirts.
Wow.
And he would make me all the stuff for it, and that's what I wore. And I did it to try to, help him a little bit. And he made all the stuff for me, and he would give me like 20 shirts, so I would hand the shirts out and stuff for each show, because it would be where he would embroider
Wow.
something on it, like whatever the show was, Battle of the Giants or David versus Goliath, or all those things. Yeah, UFC 8 was David versus Goliath, so they had that like
I could
embroidered on it.
totally see that nowadays in like a sports card, like the memorabilia, like a Big John auto card autograph.
I will say, it's funny because I was just when I moved to where I'm at, I have a big Connex box that's full of stuff, and my wife was going through it, and she pulls out, it's got a bunch of the old UFC shirts and stuff like that. So I'll send you an old refereeing shirt.
I'll wear it with pride if I can squeeze in it.
You got it. You can squeeze in it. It's big.
Awesome. So we got another question. This is a long question, so I'll just read the actual question part. But from the Fancy Crawdad, has there ever been any moments where you wanted to stop watching MMA, watching every event after seeing a generation you loved all lose? Has there ever been a moment that brought you some disappointment or heartbreak that you were like, I don't even know if I want to watch this sport anymore?
No, as far as watching the sport, I've never lost interest in the sport. I've never lost my love for what MMA is. Are there times when I'm not happy with the sport? Of course. Are there times when they're going to put on a fight that I know that's a freaking horrible fight, and I know why you're doing it? Look, I was even working as a referee on some of those, and some of them you look and you go, I'll give you, for instance, back, Yair Rodriguez was up and coming, and he was doing really well, and he was very talented, and all of the UFC was big on him based upon he won the Ultimate Fighter show that they did for Mexico, and he was all of a sudden they're putting him where he's going to be he fought Andre Fili, then he fought Alex Karalexis, and then they put him against BJ Penn. And I was like, and the BJ Penn fight was in Arizona, and I was contacted by the commission and asked if I was available for it, and I said yeah. And I was, when I realized what fight, I was like, man, I do not want that fight. And then I did that a lot, where there's like, I don't want that fight, but I got put in with that fight, and it was like, all right. And I went and I was talking with Sean Shelby and Joe, and I said, why are you doing this? I said, what's going to happen here. And they go, yeah, we do. But here, John, what do you want me to do? I've got BJ, he makes a lot of money per fight. I go, and they, they're talking, they said, and he makes so much money that if I give him somebody that he can beat, he's going to want to fight again. So I've got to, use his name to try to push my young fighter. That's why you got this fight. Right. And I'm like, it's just so wrong, but it's understandable. And then, I remember, I would go into the back with every fighter that I work with, going into the locker room. Hey, how you doing? I'm John, whatever it was, I'm going to do your fight. Do you have any questions? And we would go over everything. And, and I had done so many of BJ's fights at that point, when I go into BJ's locker room, BJ is, John, how you doing? Right. And I say, hey, what's up, BJ? How's the training? You doing good? He's, I'm doing good. He says, man, don't stop my fight, John. And he was always, don't stop my fight, John. Don't stop my fight, John. I said, BJ, I'm not going to stop your fight if you do the things I need you to do. And this is what I need you to do. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be stopping your fight. And it's just one of those, I hated those moments. hated him, couldn't stand him, you know. And it's like I never, you know, I always love great competition. I love when I got a fight that is like, man, either guy here can win. You know, when I have a fight, you know, Bilal Muhammad versus, you know, JDM. That's great. You know, that's what you're looking for. Either guy can win. But when I have that, I know who's going to win. I hate it.
Yeah.
Can't stand that. Because especially when it's an older guy that, you know, I had, you know, some feelings about because I've been working with him so long, and I know that he's going to be on the short end of the stick. Couldn't stand it. I hated that part of it. But, you know, you do your job, and my whole thing was, you know, let him go as long as I can, so he knows that, you know, he had his shot, but not so long that he gets seriously hurt. And that's the way to look at it. That's what you did.
And I'm sure it's hard as a friend to see somebody that you know, like, they believe they can win.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Like, who are you to tell them no? Or at the moment, you know, you can't shit on their parade.
No, and they should believe that they can win. You know, and I've had the ones that knew, I know this isn't a good fight for me, and it's like, what are you doing? It is what it is.
That fight was actually the first fight UFC event my buddy Hunter ever went to in Arizona. Was Yair and BJ.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He's the one that he worked out with me every day when I was on my weight loss journey. He invited me into his basement. We made it a little iron paradise down there.
There you go.
He's a good man. I love you, Hunt.
That's good.
But on to the next question from Lemon Venom 777.
Lemon Venom.
This is a little bit
better.
Did you know Pride 1 had some rigged fights? Kaito versus Johnson was admitted a work. Any others?
How many?
How much time do we have?
Here, you're looking at someone that was actually was going to fight in Pride.
What?
I got contacted by Pride. Yeah, it was this, you know, I was just at that point that I was like, you know what, I need to do it one time. So, and you know, Mark Coleman had a fight that he threw in Pride. It was, you know, he's come out and said it, so I'm not saying anything that he hasn't put out there. But against Takada, you know, and it was funny because the one thing that, you know, Mark was always the guy who he was very tense during fights, and he got tired because of it. And I remember him telling me, he says, John, he says, I never felt so good in a fight. He goes, I had no, you know, pressure. The one thing I learned is no pressure. He goes, I had gas. I was good. I was doing good. Right? He said, I was, you know, I just thought, oh shit, man, I'm going to have to lose this to this guy, and I can kick his ass, you know? And he could have, you know, but it was, you know, part of the whole thing with Pride is, you know, there was the thing, you know, with pro wrestling. And so they tried to push that into a lot of it. They had quite a few, what we call worked fights. A shoot means it's a fight where anyone can win. A work means it's a predetermined outcome. And so they had a lot of those. But yeah, actually, you know, I got contacted. We were talking. I was close to doing it. They told me who the opponent was. And I said, absolutely. And then they told me that I had to lose. And I was like, that ain't going to happen. I said, if he can beat me, no problem. I said,
was it Mike Beltran?
No, it wasn't Mike Beltran.
I might pay money to see you and Mike go at it.
We've already done that. Trust me.
Oh, man. Okay, on to Aces Wild MMA. Should Jon Jones retire and save his legacy?
Yeah. See, my problem with Jon Jones's legacy is his legacy as far as what he's done in the cage is fantastic. It's his legacy as far as everything else, you know, outside of it is where he damages it. You know, and you look and you go, you know, the whole, you know, PED thing, that's kind of outside of it, even though it does affect what's inside of it also. But Jon needs to just, you know, he gets into these almost like pissing contests with fans, and it's like, why? What are you doing, Jon? You're the man. You don't have to do any of that. Here. Joe Rogan told me something long ago. And this is the truth. And this is why I laugh at Josh. He says, Jon, never read comments, right? It's like, okay, and I don't, right? Because it doesn't matter. Someone makes a comment, be it good. Okay. So you get 100 people, 99 of them give you great comments. One gives you, you're an asshole, you're a shithead, you're this, you're that. And which one are you going to care about? So is it worth the 99 to have to put up with one? No, it's not. Well, Jon's got that same kind of thing. He lets people, he pokes at people. He likes to push buttons and stuff like that, but he doesn't do well when someone gets one on him and he starts to come, out on it. It's like, what are you doing? All you got to say is, excuse me, who's the person that actually beat me in a fight? Dana's done a great job for Jon. Put Jon Jones in a room with so-and-so and so-and-so and everybody in there, and I guarantee it's Jon Jones that walks out. And he's probably right, And so you look and you go, Jon just has to figure out, look, do I want to fight Tom Aspinall? Is it worth it to me? Do I care? Because if you don't care, then don't do it. If you care and say, you know what, I want to prove everybody wrong. I want to prove to everyone that is saying that this guy can beat me. I just want to look at you and go, suckers. Okay. That's, I'm not saying that in the end, that's what he's going to be able to do, but that's there's no doubt, when I say same as, we were talking about BJ Penn there. Did he think he was going to win the fight? Absolutely. Does Jon think that he can beat Tom Aspinall? Absolutely. No doubt about it. And there's a good chance he could, but he just needs to figure out what's important to him. You got plenty of money. You can live the rest of your life very well if you're not an idiot and blow it all. You can do whatever, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, and not have to, it's fame does things with people. And you either really like it or you can be that person that's like, doesn't do anything for it. Fame doesn't give you, money. There's nothing good about being famous. If there's no money with it, fame sucks. Because that just means that people think that you're rich. Jon is rich. Okay. And Jon can do whatever he wants. So, the whole thing with the Aspinall thing is if you don't want to fight him, then don't fight him. If the love of it is gone, walk away. If it's still there, then sign the contract and do your thing.
This is a little bit of what I think, but I'm obviously not a sports athlete. I'm not any athlete. I'm not a fighter. I did train Alta, but I think Jon, he rose to height of fame at 22?
Yeah,
a baby.
Yeah, super young.
And you build so much of your identity as a man throughout those years of your life. I'm still building my identity as a man.
Oh,
and when your whole world is that you are the baddest man on the planet in any room you walk in, you put a lot of weight into that basket. And when it starts to leave, because age, nobody's able-bodied forever. Age is a motherfucker.
Yes, it is.
So once that age starts creeping up and you lose some of those abilities, you have to.
You will lose those abilities.
I feel like there's a level of identity crisis that comes in of like, who am I? Who is Jon Jones? Yeah. And even though we know Jon Jones.
That's why, when you sit there and you say, look at Jon Jones, when it's inside the cage, he doesn't make mistakes. It's everything outside the cage that he's making mistakes. And you look and you go, and that's, he's going to have to fix those. And I'm sure, like you said, look, when Jon, fame hit Jon, he was very young. And all I can say is I know that if I, had the fame that Jon did back then, at that age, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I tell people all the time, do you realize how many things are being thrown at him? The Fertittas bought him a Bentley. and he crashed it right away. And he crashed it with, women in his car with his, girlfriend at home and stuff. And you look and you go, Jon, what are you doing? But it's like, yeah, you're Jon Jones. You're young. I don't blame you. I understand. But there comes a point eventually where you've got to, grow up and say, okay, enough. And at the age that he is now, at 35, is what Jon is. It's about that time when you start to actually know, this is who I am. People used to ask me all the time, hey man, if you could go back to being 25, would you go back and do things different or fight and I said, can I have the brain that I have now? Right? And they go, no, you'd be 25. If I'm going to be like I was when I was 25, no, I'm not going back. I was a dumbass and I did too many stupid things and I'm not proud of all those things. And so, no, I'm not going to go back to that. And that's, that's what Jon is, eventually someday he's, he'll look and go, yeah, I fucked up there. It's just part of maturity. It's just sometimes it takes longer for some people than it does others, but it's not easy, being that person that everything is given to you, thrown at you. I know it seems like it's a great thing, but it can work against you. It really can.
I believe it. But Jon, I know you're not listening to this, but Jon, I got faith in you, buddy. You can do anything you damn well please.
Damn well please.
Including getting bit by Hasbulla in Thailand. You see Hasbulla bit his ear in Thailand? He jumped on his ear and bit him, and Jon was like, ah!
Dude, I think Hasbulla is going to end up getting tossed. He's had a couple, man. He's hit people and stuff, and it's like,
someone's going to, Hasbulla's like 23, right? He's not a baby.
Well, that's the problem is a lot of people pick him up like he's a little child and stuff. And it's like, I'm sure he doesn't appreciate being treated like a child.
I think if you put me and Hasbulla in the octagon, we could make some money.
Either that or make a spectacle.
Maybe. It'll be like Pride.
There you go. Predetermined winner. Hasbulla wins.
Hey, I'd go down for enough money.
There you go.
Okay, this is kind of related to the Jon question. JP Knowledge 8852. Who else is there for Tom Aspinall to fight outside of Jon Jones that anyone cares to see right now?
I'll tell you what, there's not many. There, that's the whole thing when you take a look at it and you go, right now, if you're going to look and say, who is the person, that people would actually care about seeing? Well, he's already beat Volkov. He's beat Pavlovich. He's beat Blades. So the guys that are above and below those guys, Cyril Gahn and Jelton Almeida. Those are the two guys that I'm going to look and say, all right, these are the guys that, people would possibly want to see Tom Aspinall fight. I would say Jelton Almeida would be one that they'd want to see him fight, and possibly, Cyril Gahn. I think Cyril Gahn's lost some of the luster. He was real hot for a while, and now, after the Ngannou fight, the Jones fight, it's just some of that star quality kind of went away a little bit.
Yeah,
and so Almeida is that person that he's still even though he had like the Derek Lewis fight where he took a long time. He had the Blades fight that he lost, and that's he got tired. Happens, but this is the problem for Tom Aspinall, and this is why Tom Aspinall needs Jon Jones. Really, is you can go and take a look at that entire list of the top 15 in the heavyweights, and it's not the UFC's fault. There's just not that many good heavyweight fighters out there because they're doing other sports. It's like, hey, I can play basketball or I can get punched in the face. I'm going to go get punched in the face. Nope. I can play football, make a ton of money, or I can get punched in the face. Guess what they're going to go do? And this is what heavyweights, as far as fighters, they can, do other sports. So I look at it, there's just not that many people. I think the number 15 is Martin Bidet. and you look and you go, that's your number 15 in the UFC. But hey, it's there's just not that high a quality with everybody. It's like I love Tai Tuivasa, right? He's fun to watch. He's great as far as his personality and everything. But he's more like your modern day Tank Abbott. He's a guy. He'll brawl. He'll give it. What he's got. Everything he's got and stuff. But he's just not going to be. He's not going to be the champion. You know it. He's not going to win a championship. But he's in the top 10. And so this is what's you take a look at the featherweights or the lightweights and you go the top 10. Those are all killers. Any one of them on a given day can beat that champion. Not the same in the heavyweights.
Very true. One fighter I always like to throw in there, because he's been in there in the talk the whole time, is Volkov. He lost to Cyril Gane. Dana White was not happy after that fight. He told Volkov he got screwed.
Yeah.
But I like him. And he even said to himself, he said, I'm getting older. My chances of fighting for a title more and more are leaving. Mm-hmm. So that was more in reference to Jon Jones not fighting. He was like, putting the division on hold.
But you take a look at where Volkov is at now. Volkov was the champion of Bellator for a while. And, good fighter, but had problems with the ground. More of a stand-up fighter. He's really improved his ground and stuff. But, he already proved, can he beat Tom Aspinall? No, he ain't beating Tom Aspinall. And this is the problem for Aspinall is there's just not going to be that many guys. Just not.
I think even if we took Poatan and brought him up, that doesn't even make the division too extra exciting.
At least it makes it more exciting.
A little bit, but the wrestle factor is still there. If Big Onk can come in and wrestle you for 5 rounds.
That's it.
My farm needs the earth, the air, and the water. I get my energy going on LMNT Electrolyte Drink Mix. Clean, good-tasting energy that feeds me like I feed my plants and animals. And after a long day on the tractor, when it's time to shoot the podcast, I drink LMNT so that I can stay energized and stay salty. Let's get it on.
All right, guys, we are back, and I'm going to wrap this up with 2 questions because I don't want to drag Big John along too much down this. But we got a question from Instagram. Let me find it again. From ASIFALL Business. Assifall Business? I'm going to guess that.
Okay.
Big John, have you ever caught yourself being a fan and enjoying a fight while you were refereeing it?
No. I like to say, have I enjoyed fights while I'm refereeing it? Yeah, there were fights that I enjoyed doing just because of what I was seeing was so impressive. But I always I was never the fan. I was always looking for the things, and you can't look at a fight like a fan when you're refereeing it. You're looking for certain things, and you're putting yourself in positions. Everything is about the positioning that you put yourself in while you're there. There's what we call open side, closed side, all these different things. And if you're stopping to be the fan, you're going to stop doing the right things as far as where you're supposed to be and how to be there. And so you can't be successful and do it that way. You've got to be, I always call it be in the moment. You know what? As soon as you step in there and you start that fight, be in the moment. All you're thinking about is your job and what you're supposed to do. And so that's the way I tried to do it.
Totally understandable and professional, as I expect from you.
Thank you very much.
And then let's go to this last question from Twitter. We have Joe Sandoval 138. Hey, John, at UFC 40, Tito versus Shamrock, during the weigh-in face-off, you stood in between the two. Was that the first? It says first only time you were in that position?
Yeah, it was the first and the only. Yeah.
Wow.
And the whole reason was, they were at that time, Dana was not so much, the face of the UFC, and they were worried that, you know, there was so many words that were being spewed back and forth. Because back, if you go back earlier in the UFC, I think it was somewhere around UFC 21 or so. Tito fought Guy Mesger. He fought him twice, and this one was the second one. And he beats Guy, and then Ken Shamrock is in his corner, and Ken's up on the cage wall, and he's, you know, yelling, and Tito's basically, you know, telling him, you know, kiss my ass. And they had words, and it was just the whole thing. Well, it kind of carried all the way to the UFC 40, which was a big show for the UFC. They were hurting, you know, as far as, you know, money output and everything. And so I was up there to make sure that if they started to fight, I stopped it. That was the only reason I was up there, and I felt like an idiot being up there. I really did. And I'm glad, you know, that that was the one and only time, because, you know, it was like, really? So these guys start to jump at each other, and now I gotta fucking come in the middle of this. You know, I'm glad Dana does it. Dana took it over, and he does a fine job. You know, and it's a matter of, you know, you've got to be cognizant of, I can't allow these guys to hit each other up here. You know, it happens with some, because, you know, some guys don't all they look at is look, I'm up here with the fighters. This is great, you know. So but that was why I was up there, and like, I think that was a one and done. Perfect.
Well, thank God nothing crazy happened that night.
That's it.
Well, fans, that has been our episode for this beautiful Sunday. Before I go, I want to remind you all, head over to betustv.com for all the best sports content out there. Click the link in our bio for your delicious, tasty, salty LMNT beverages. Every time you order with the link in our bio, you get a surprise package. Who knows what it will be, but it will be awesome. And I want you guys to head over to our OnlyFans. Follow for free. Get all the best sports content out there. You're going to get extra live stream once a month from the boys over here at Weighing In. It's just me and Josh, or me and John here right now. That's the second time today I called you Josh. I will never disrespect you like that. But
I've never been so pretty.
But I love you guys. Thank you for sticking it out with us. And Big John, I want you to take us away.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you, George, for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed. We will see you.